Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe. And today I'm really excited to have my friend David S. David is really an amazing voice for recovery, originally from Connecticut and sober since January 1st, 1987. David committed to service about a year and a half later, and over the years, he's worn many service hats, from making coffee and chairing meetings to co-chairing the New England Conference of Young People and attending international conventions from Seattle to Vancouver in 2025. David's been married to the same amazing woman for 25 years and has a son studying at the University of Tennessee. As a alumni of the university, I have to say, go Vols. Today, David continues to give back as the District 6 Committee Chair for Corrections here in East Tennessee, visiting jails, prisons, and supporting countless others on their recovery journey. David's story is one of perseverance, service, and the power of asking for help when you can't do it alone. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing real well. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you, man, and thank you so much for your willingness to share your experience, strength, and hope.
Well, we'll see.
I like that answer, Dave. We'll see. So what was it like growing up, Dave?
Ooh, the short answer, it was hard. My mom and dad moved us to a place where there were no kids, and so friendless. And then mom and dad got divorced, and it never got better. Lived with mom, a little bit poor. As I got older, I got bullied, and as I got a little older than that, I found alcohol, and that took care of the bullying. Now I just became an alcoholic jerk. Went to a private boys' school where the bullying was at its best. Totally ignored for 3 years. That was like the longest 3 years of like living in purgatory, you know. I forced myself to stay busy so that I didn't have to think about the emptiness, as it were. And yeah.
Do you remember the first time you felt the effects of alcohol, Dave?
Oh God, yes. I was at the Sharon Playhouse in Sharon, Connecticut. I was going into my junior year, so I was going into my senior year, so I was a junior. And the tech director said, "What do you drink?" I had never drank anything. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, what are you drinking?" I thought I'd turn the question around. And he said, "Miller High Light." And I said, "Fine." I'd never touched the stuff in my life, didn't know what I was about to do. But I got good and drunk that day. And the next day, I was good and drunk and I drove. And that really didn't change for the rest of the summer. I pretty much was the rum and vodka guy, rum and Coke guy. And when the Coke ran out, there was still rum. So I kept drinking. Yeah, it was kind of nice there at the start. By the end of the summer, I was just drunk, and as recluse and not interacting with people, and drunk in addition. About the way they describe it. Yeah.
No, I can understand. And that was there was it your family like heavy drinkers, or what was like the
Yeah, I get it.
feeling of alcohol, I guess?
Yeah, my father had served in World War II. He served on the front line for 4 years or 3.5. And I have a feeling that he saw and experienced a lot of things that were really, really hard. He secured a job where the bosses were also vets. So they knew. They didn't have to talk about stuff. And I think they saw my father drinking, and when they realized all the stuff he'd been through, they just sort of left him alone. And he did a remarkably good job for the company. One night we were at the Elks Club, and he's at one end of the bar, and I'm at the other end of the bar. And in between us are his students who are learning how to sell stuff. He takes a drink. They're all looking at him. I take a drink. They're all looking at me. Everybody had like 1 or 2 drinks that night. Dad and I probably had 14 or 15 between a piece, 14 or 15 a piece, not to mention what we did when we got home. So my mom was a teetotaler, but the disease of alcoholism touched her, and the divorce in the 60s and 70s was just really bad, and we were pretty much alone. There were a few women that would actually interact with us, but most people were like, you don't do that. And so we were shunned. We'd show up at church and people would be polite, but nobody would extend a hand to say, can we help you, or can we assist you with your boys? And no, didn't happen.
So you're in high school, in that summer, drinking heavily. Were there any consequences at that point, or was it just
here's what happened? I went back to school as a senior in the state of Connecticut. I could not only enlist and vote, I could drink legally. I was 20 years old. So one night I opted to go to the party that I knew was existing in a state area. So it was state land. And I went down there and literally emptied somebody's beer bottle because that's all they had left. So, we're talking 2 or 3 squigs, and that was it. I mean, that didn't even wet my tongue, but the beer was gone. The party was breaking up. I had been late, and I wandered up and away from everybody and was sitting on this literally rock, and the park was called Steep Rock. And sure enough, up shows a teacher who gets right in my face, and you can smell the beer. So as a senior, I spent 2 weeks in the classroom where they had all the freshmen and some sophomores studying as sort of punishment. It was particularly hard because some of the people that participated in giving me the punishment had been drinking at Steep Rock. And I'm looking at them going, you're screwing me. And I didn't drink hardly anything compared to what you were doing. And you're screwing. Oh man, it was one of those. And that was the first consequence of drinking. Yeah, that was the first consequence of taking a drink. There were others.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. If you're like me, I know there was others, Dave. I know there was others. So, did you think maybe I've got an issue at any point during this time, or was it not even a thought process?
I think the alcohol was helping me to deal with the bullying, the loneliness, the emptiness, the despair. When I drank on campus, because I did drink a few times on campus, I was drinking with a couple of other people that were also drinking like me. But they hadn't developed the ability to drink like I had. So when I was drinking on campus, it'd be like 1 or 2 glasses of rum with Coke, and that was all. And so aside from the 2 weeks restricted to the school, that was the only consequence then, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did I guess life and drinking progress, from there?
Oh, well, at the end of my senior year, I went back to the Sharon Playhouse. I mean, I'm a good drunk. If it worked the first time, maybe it'll work the second time. There were very, very few people that were there the second time that had been there the first time. Um, and I went to work there because while I had a job with the city, um, I felt like I had enlisted in the Navy and I was taking a job away from somebody who really needed some work, and so I went to the Playhouse, and I'm there. I'm drunk as ever. As a matter of fact, one night a New York City school teacher took me to the local ER because I was really hungover. And the ER doc is trying to figure out what's wrong with me. He says, "What'd you do last night?" And I looked at him and said, I think I drank 3/4 of a gallon of rum. 3/4 of a gallon of rum. Hello. And he looked at me and he went, "Well, you can go home and sleep it off." "That's what's wrong with me, doc?" "Yes." Okay. So, get drunk, sleep it off. Doctor's orders. What can I tell you? So I finished up the season that summer, and in September, I was enlisted in the U.S. Navy. Yeah.
I can only imagine your drinking did not get worse in the Navy.
Oh my God, did it take? Oh, geez. And I'm a great drunk. I looked at my watch and I said, "Oh, my watch says that it's 10 o'clock. I'll drink for 2 hours." Great willpower. That was one night. The next night, I showed up at the exact same bar at 6 o'clock and drank till 12:30. Now, think about it. I remember that stuff. Yeah, that went on for about a year, maybe a little more. Um, and at the end of a fiscal year in the Navy, they had paid me something like $5,000. The only thing I could show for it was $5,000 worth of alcohol consumed, drank, and then one does what one has to do after that much alcohol. Yeah.
Were did the loneliness and all that get any better in the Navy, Dave?
Oh no. Oh God, no. See now, I, I'd had one girlfriend in high school in my sophomore year for 6 months. So the rest of that time in that school, no interaction with really anybody, and particularly none with girls. I mean, occasionally I would chat with one, but it was usually about homework or something pertaining to school, and never very long. I remember I told one girl the answer to a problem. It was a political drawing, and I gave her the answer, and she got an A. Um, she showed me the A. I got a C with the comment from the teacher that he thought I may have had an idea of what I was talking about, but he couldn't understand it. So therefore, he graciously gave me a C, and I'm looking at her paper thinking, that's my work. She can spell, and I can't. And so not doing very well. And then of course I joined the Navy, and now I'm completely out of my element. I'm just too nerdy, too goofy, and too drunk, too consistently drunk to really do anything well. Um, I got to third class. I mean, I got to fireman by virtue of the fact that I put in a year and a half, and they kind of advance you from apprentice to fireman because of time and rate. I mean, they just do. But somewhere in there, in a bar one night, I realized drinking was killing me. not physically killing me, but just it was going to deprive me of any sort of advancement in the Navy. And so I had this epiphany one night in the bar, and I raised my beard to the ceiling and I said, you know, God, if this is all there is, I don't want it anymore. That's a direct quote. I remember it like it was yesterday, you know, and it's been a few 24 hours since I said that. And then a couple of months later, or maybe I'll tell you when exactly, there was a pope. His name was John Paul I. When he was elected, shortly thereafterwards, I asked God to help me not drink anymore. And I had 2 weeks of hallucinations. Oh, it was just crazy. But at the end of that, I walked into a bar one night because I didn't know what else to do. And I ordered a soda. And some of the guys who I worked with went to the bartender, if he orders soda all night, we'll pay for it. Now, years into recovery is when I remembered that. And it dawned on me that they must have known that I was drinking pretty heavily compared to them. And I thought they were bad. So the upshot of not drinking was the second ship, after I did that on the one ship, the second ship was the Puget Sound. And I got put with the A gangers. M Division to A gang is a little bit akin to being released from jail. I mean, you just don't get out of M Division. You just don't. Not in 77, not in 70. You didn't. There weren't enough of us in the engine rooms. And they approved it one day. And so I found myself with A gang, and those guys were the Pentecostals, and they showed me a different way to live and function. And it was pretty amazing. They left, and now I had religion. And here's what I can say about religion. It's wonderful, but there was nobody to teach me how to function as a person. Nobody. They taught me how to pray. They taught me how to understand God. But they really didn't teach me how to live or how to make decisions. So by the time I married my first wife, and she looked at me and said, I can't live with a drunk, I was totally floored. I mean, yeah, I'd been fired from 7 jobs in 1 year, you know, and wasn't doing very good in the current job. And I couldn't understand why that was happening to me. You know, I'm not. And then she says, I can't live with a drunk. And I'm like, honey, I'm not drunk. Man, I'm hardly drinking. I mean, in our 2.5-year marriage, I might have had a couple of gallons of alcohol. Now think about it. A couple of gallons over 2.5 years when I was probably drinking 6-7 hours straight every other night. And so one day after ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and trying Al-Anon, little old woman, and I say little old woman because she was as white as me. She came up to hear on me, and she was a woman, little old woman, looked at me and said, son, okay, you belong next door. That's why we know so much about you. And I found myself in AA. And about 9 months in, or 6 months in, 5 months in, something like that, somebody said you should join our meeting and tell us your sobriety date. Oh, couldn't do that. So after the meeting, the woman in charge of sobriety dates and I sat down, we tried to figure out a date, and 1/1/87 became my sobriety date. It's possible that instead of celebrating 39 years, I could be celebrating 40 or 41 and a half. But I don't honestly know. And so the best course of action at that point was just a 1/1/87. So that's how I got my sobriety date.
Hey, that's as good as any, Dave. You
Well,
know.
yeah, some people come in and say, my sobriety date is based on this last drunk. Well, I couldn't do that because actually I didn't know when the last time was I had a drink.
Yeah.
Um, I remember the last time that I had a drink where something exciting happened.
So, what was that early recovery like? So this is 1987.
Oh,
What was early recovery like?
I showed up to meeting after meeting after meeting. I was absolutely, I couldn't follow half the stuff that was going on. Occasionally I would like, oh, wait, that pertains to me. That makes sense to me. But most of the time I was pretty out to lunch. You got to remember that part of my problem wasn't the need to stop drinking because that basically was going on way back there when I prayed in that Navy ship. My alcohol consumption dropped off to next to nothing. And when AA said you don't have to drink, it was like, oh, hey, great. I won't feel bad every time I take the occasional drink. So now I don't have to worry about that. So I'm that part was, in a sense, that was easy because now what I'd prayed for but hadn't really carried through on, I would have had 8 years of slips. Um, Now it made sense. Okay, just don't drink. Hey, no problem. I don't really feel the urge to drink. And when I do, I feel kind of crazy. But this thing, oh, it was a freaking mess. Bullied, lonely, no girlfriends, no ability to communicate with human beings. I mean, none. People would ask me a question and I would give a one-word answer and they would look at me like, are you going to say anything else? And I'm like, I answered your question. Um, my sponsor once looked at me and said, Dave, you got to learn small talk. And I had to ask Ethan what the hell small talk meant because I didn't even know, you know. So I was up against a couple of things. I was trying to learn how to live like an adult in a 30-year-old plus body when mentally I'm probably about 18. I'm trying to learn how to be responsible when I've been responsible all my life, but responsible not because I needed to be, but because everybody said I needed to be responsible. You know, um, case in point, my brother decided he was going to live with dad after visiting him, and he and I visited him and his mother for 2 weeks. And Pete said, "I'm going back with dad to Illinois." Well, I understood that. Pete was looking for a family. Pete was looking for life other than with our mother. But I'm the responsible one. I went home to mom, and you were asked earlier what my life was like. I got off the plane, got in the car. This was back when there was no TSA, no security checks. I got in that car. It was an hour and a half home. She didn't stop once. Not once did she stop telling me, why did I let it happen? Why was I not more proactive and prevent it? She was so angry with me, so angry with Peter. I mean, I listened to this for an hour and a half. I am not there when I get into AA. I had a therapist. Steve once said, I don't think he was joking. I think he said one time, you kind of have PSD from the trauma of just living, you know? And it wasn't all about the alcohol. It was about an hour and a half car ride with mom screaming at me. It was about looking at people and not being able to communicate. It was about being so alone in my own head that I had conversations with myself that seemed perfectly normal. God, if you had recorded them, you could have pointed out that I was off my frickin' rocker, but it didn't make sense. That never crossed my mind. So that was my problem when I got here. I had to learn virtually everything, not how to pay bills, but how to make decisions about paying bills, not not how to, look at people, but how to look and talk to people. That was just that, probably 5 or 6 years. You know, um, I taught somebody how to skate backwards, and she was pretty. She was paying attention to me, and I did not have the courage to say, "You dating anybody? Could I ask you out? Could I meet you here next week to skate?" I couldn't do it. I think she might have said, "Yeah," but I I just didn't feel comfortable and confident in myself to ask. Yeah.
So how did early on, how did that stuff start to change, or what were some of the actions you took to start changing?
Well, in your intro, you said I got involved in service. Sometimes that was by mistake. Sometimes I was voluntold. You're going to make coffee. Okay. Can somebody show me how? But the act of getting involved forced me. Louise Adams, a delegate, trustee, DCM, GSR, married to a delegate, trustee, DCM, GSR. I mean, these were service people. Once looked at me and said, service will keep you sober. And I took that to mean literally what it said. Service will keep me sober without a drink. Later, later I discovered what she was really saying was, not only will it keep you dry, but it will force you to interact with people and learn how to interact with people. And on a very mechanical level, it worked. I started communicating with people because I was on committees, I was doing things in service, and I needed to open my mouth and say stuff. And that's, you know, to that end, I could do that. And that was the beginning of kind of small talking with people about things other than service issues. But in the intro, you said I was the co-chair of the New England Conference of Young People in 1991. In 1991, I actually had a conversation with I started having conversations with people other than service work, not up till then. So that's 87 to basically 90, where, you know, I show up, my eyes are glazed over, not because I'm drunk, but because I'm listening to people for the first time, and they're not screaming at me. They're not telling me I'm bad. They're not telling me I'm the problem. They're not telling, they're saying, "Hi, Dave. How do you respond to that?" I didn't know. I had to learn.
Well, how do you respond to that, Dave?
Oh, hi. How you doing today, man? You having a great day? Did you
Yeah,
hear that?
yeah,
That that came naturally.
yeah.
And that was so not the case. I would have looked at you and said hi. And the silence was a killer.
What especially, what helped you? I know service, service was a big deal or a big part of your story. I know. And that what you would say that helped you stay committed when the days got tough, is having those commitments?
Yes, I would have to say that's the case. There was something else going on though. When I got here, they said keep coming back. Don't stop before the miracle. Ooh, what's a miracle? But when they said keep coming back, it was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. And probably in the first 5, 6, 7 years, I went to a meeting every day and a couple of times on the weekend. Um, and you would think with all that, I would get much, much better. But, you know, I had to be placed in situations where I could, talk to people and converse with people. And, you know, first girlfriend was kind of it was a show that ended very badly. And then there was another girlfriend, and it ended worse. But now the problem is that the first girlfriend, no feelings, were really bubbling. This one, there were feelings, and that sucked. And I dated a number of women in Connecticut, and I just wasn't smart enough to pick up the phone and talk to my sponsor or the therapist about how to do this better. See, I could pick up the phone to deal with me. I could pick up the phone to deal with service issues, but I wasn't really good about, hey, Bill, how do you date? What's going on with this? I just sort of swung it on my own, and yeah, there were consequences to that.
That was kind of my next, because I think you mentioned some, but I'm like, so were there influential people in recovery that were kind of, helping you along the way to kind of keep moving forward in a positive direction?
Yeah, there was a guy named Ethan Yu. Ethan was there when I got there, and Ethan was very kind to me. There was a guy named Grateful Dennis. He was also equally kind. Grateful Dennis had served in World War II. Been a POW since the Angio beachhead. So he was a POW for about a year and a half before the war ended. And he was a really good drunk, because when he was released, he saw some wine bottles in the field, and he and another guy ran to them and consumed them quickly. So, there was Louise and her husband, Norm. There were a couple of men, Jack. Jack is a really good example. Jack, I remember I got here, I didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. And if you said, well, what is your retirement plan? I would have looked at you and said, work till I die. I mean, and so Jack liked to ski. We would ski down the slope, and I was good enough that he suggested that I join a ski reporting agency and report the conditions of the slopes. And you really need to be able to describe snow and ski it to really understand what you're skiing through and on top of. And I could do that. But more importantly, going up in the chairlift, Jack and I talked about money and finance. And he helped me turn my life around regarding getting ready to retire, getting ready to make decisions financially that made sense. And it's just taught me a ton of stuff that I can never repay. You and I go up to the jail together, right? And I'm able to do that because I was able to put the money aside and make it grow and work hard and be ready for retirement. And that's when I got here, that wasn't on my horizon, but that's one thing. And then Louise and Norm were really very kind to me. Ethan, there were people that, and Bill, my sponsor, and a couple of other guys that I knew that were there, and really just kind of treated me like a son / adult that I was, and they understood I was messed up. They didn't expect great things from me like early on, but when I started doing some real service work, people were like, yeah, he can do stuff. Yeah.
I think it's so important for people to hear about the fellowship, and because I know when I came in, and I always said it, that there were people in recovery that loved me when I didn't love myself. And I don't know how or why. I mean, I was, for me, I just say for me, it was a God thing that there was people in that just would not give up on me, and I don't know how how that happened. I still don't know how that happened. but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, Bill was my sponsor, and he dated and then married Leslie. And oh, she could be kind one minute and then clearly state a boundary. Of course, back then I thought I was being screamed at, you know. I mean, this is the progress of growth. She's screaming at me. No, she's setting a boundary. It took me about 2 years to figure out that she just didn't scream at me. She was trying to set a boundary. You know, things improved a lot when it dawned on me she was doing that, you know. For example, one time I was in Connecticut. I was visiting. I was going to visit them. I couldn't help not to. But I called Bill and told Bill, hey, I'm going to be there in about an hour. Bill's got dementia. It never got back to Leslie until I called from the pizza place to say I was 30 minutes out with the pizza. And she let me have it. You know, Bill's got dementia. He never told me. This is very frustrating. I'll never do that again. And I always talk to her about the important stuff. And then she died, and you got shuffled off to a nursing home, and I would call, and I was the only one that was calling from Connecticut on the phone. And finally it was just, he didn't even know I was on the phone. Oh, that broke my heart. But Dave, yep, his name is Dave. I had been in communication with him, and at some point I just looked at him and said, I need a sponsor. I can't do this alone. And he said, been kind of waiting. So, you know, we've known each other since the early days of my recovery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I had Mike as my sponsor. Mike passed away in 2020, and I have my friend Marvin was always like a spiritual advisor. I called him to me. You know, I think you know Marvin, but I was sitting down and I said, "Hey," I said, "I got to find a sponsor." I said, "Who would you suggest that I get?" You know, and he was like, "He's like, is there something wrong with me?" I was like, I just never thought, Marvin, that you would say yes. You know, it's like saying yes to the dress. But Marvin has been an amazing person in my life. But that literally happened to me, you know?
We get these sponsors. Bill and I were, my first sponsor's name was Bill. He took my fourth step. And after my fourth step, he went out and drank. Well, he went out and drank, but he got back into the fellowship. Well, then there was another guy named Bill who I'd seen at Adult Children of Alcoholics and Al-Anon before I joined AA, and he's in AA. So I just looked at him and said, want to be my sponsor? And he said, sure. And he did something that was really good for me, although it wasn't good for recovery. It was good for me. He helped me to feel okay. So I could do something, and he didn't really scream at me. You know, he just kind of like, can I do that again? Was that a wise move? And sometimes he would make no comment at all. He would just listen. And while that didn't necessarily spur me on to a greater depth of understanding of the big book and the steps, it sure helped me feel for the first time like somebody loved me. And they didn't love me for my money. They didn't love me because I was a guy and they were a woman. Those two people just loved me because I was present as in a mess that I was. And that love helped me to start to bloom a little bit, you know. So, I'm doing all sorts of stupid things, but people are like, he does service pretty good. And Louise looks at me one day and says, I want you to run for delegate. I looked at Louise and I said very clearly, you do know who you're speaking to, right, Louise? I mean, you do know who you're speaking to, Louise. She goes, yes, I want you to run for delegate. Louise said, run for delegate. I'm running for delegate. I'm not going to incur her wrath. I had once, and that was enough. I went up and I stood for delegate. I got 40 votes. you know,
that's
yeah.
that's awesome, Dave. Like that type, like you've like that's what I think is important for people to know. And there's like service structure in recovery programs like AA that, and you've done a lot in that service structure, which is pretty remarkable, I think.
Well, got to remember something. Service gave me a connection to people. That was something I never had before. And so all of a sudden I'm talking to people. I'm going out for hot dogs with people. I'm going out for ice cream with people. Ethan invites me to Friendly's ice cream, which in New England was a big thing. And, I'm beginning to feel okay, you know. And I, I'm feeling that love. And service just made me connected with people. And as lonely as I was for that, service really was incredible. Here's a story I don't rarely tell. I was leaving to come to Tennessee, and I told people at the GSR meeting, the district meeting, that I was leaving, and I put out the word that if anybody showed up, moved anything, or just showed up, you were invited to pizza when the truck was loaded. And this guy shows up. He moves a piece of furniture, helps organize the trailer a little bit, but doesn't kill himself. That's fine. I didn't care. You were there. And I said thank you. And his words were, I never help anybody. I made the exception in your case because of the service commitments that I saw you do. Yeah. And of course, he had pizza. But see, I was moving to Tennessee because I thought this woman that's sitting upstairs that I've been connected to for 27 years, over in the corner there is my son on his computer. I was starting a new life. I was taking a big risk, and it's like a lot of marriages. Some days are really, really good, and some days it's just a minefield. Every time I open my mouth, I might as well just shut it immediately and not let anything come out of it. And it does, and that's just, I've buried myself a few times, but we're still together, and I wouldn't want to be with anybody else. And that's Bill and Leslie shining through, telling me that I can be loved and I can love. You wonder where this takes us. I'm the treasurer for the soccer club of Oak Ridge. It's a traveling soccer club. I don't know the first thing about soccer. But when they have a financial question, they come to me and they ask. And I tell them what I think. And they all know I'm in recovery. And they have no clue what that means, honestly. But they know one thing. They can trust me. Every dime is where it's supposed to be. And they've never called me to say, we're missing something. Not once. The church is the same way. This is the first time in my life where at the end of church, I chat with people. And nobody goes running for the restroom or running for the doors. They chat back at me. I can tell when I'm not doing well at it. And I never used to be able to do that. So this morning's reading was about being returned to sanity and being returned to, being a normal person. I'm not there, but much, much closer.
You're not alone. I'm not there either, Dave. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But, um, so how do you define success in recovery now?
I haven't had a drink today. I try to do what's right for others. I was in the parking lot. My son and my wife are going into a store to do some crazy shopping in a foreign store with stuff I don't even understand, but they do. And this guy was sitting there trying to change a tire. And they said to me, "Are you coming in, Dad?" And I said, "No, I think I'm going to watch somebody change a tire." So I got out of the car, walked over, and the guy looks up at me and I said, "Can I make a suggestion?" And he looked at me and I said, let me ask this. Have you ever done this before? No. Okay. I've done it a few times. A few. Emphasis few, right? 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, 10 or 12. So I gently, nicely walked him through how to change a tire. And he was tightening up the last lug nut as my son and my wife were coming out. My wife looks at me and she says, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I taught somebody how to fish." You know?
Absolutely.
Right. And nothing to do with recovery, but how can I be not selfish, not self-centered, not inconsiderate, and not dishonest? I help this person change their tire and learn how to do it.
Yeah.
I did it another time, and when I got done changing the tire for this very attractive woman on the side of the interstate highway, I had one Harriman police officer, one Roane County sheriff, and one state highway patrolman all watching me very carefully. Not for changing the tire, to make sure I didn't do anything to her. And I got done and I stood up. I threw the stuff in the back of her trunk, turned, and the highway patrolman was standing there. I said, "Hi, my name's Dave. I'm just gotten off work at the TVA at the Kingston Fossil Plant." You could almost see his face relax. And the other two, they left. And, she drove off, and I followed her to 2 exits, and then I split off, and cop followed her. Here's the thing. It was at the end of a 13-hour shift. I was black head to toe. I was just a mess. They had every right to think that I might have done something to her at some point. I mean, and then I identified myself, and it was like, oh, he's just an ordinary guy changing a tire for a woman, and he doesn't mean anything by anything. He's just changing the tire to change the tire. That wasn't me when I got here. That would not have been me. I would have looked at her and said, "Well, hey, you call AAA and have a nice day," And she was trying to get home on the plane to get to her son's birthday. So maybe she got to the airport in time to turn in the car and I don't know. But yeah.
You did your part. That's what's cool.
Walla walla.
Walla walla, baby. So what is spirituality like for you, Dave?
It's not real complicated. It's more like how am I going to treat you okay? It's like I looked at that person who's trying to change the tire and something just hit me. He doesn't know what he's doing. You can help. I was studying and was married to a woman who was a minister. And you can have these great theological dissertations and great statements of creeds. And mine is real simple. Okay. How do I help somebody else? How do I get out of myself and assist somebody else at some point in their journey or their life that day? Ed called up one day and said, "I can't come to the church, Dave, and I can't work with you guys." And I'm like, "What's up, Ed?" Not, why can't you? What's up, Ed? And he's like, I'm not feeling very well. I said, type back on the text, which I'm not very good at. Your health is first. If you can't be here, it's not the end of the world. You take care of you first, and we'll be okay. Thanks for letting me know. And he wrote back, said thank you. And the next week he was there. Bill and Leslie said you can be loved and you can love. And love isn't always about sex. Love isn't always about, hugging and holding hands. Sometimes love is changing a tire, showing up for a sheriff who says, hey, I can't change the tire. They can't change the tire. Can somebody help us? My pager goes off and volunteer firefighter, truck out the door and go down there and change the tire for him, And as they drove off, I looked at the cop and said, you better follow them. They just went through the gutter to get out of here on a donut. What? Yeah, you'll be calling me in 30 minutes, He didn't. That was the strange part. I never got a call to come fix another tire. But maybe they blew it out and he realized there wasn't a donut, so it needed a wrecker. But it's not this thing that's screaming and hollering. It's very quiet. This needs to be done. You need to say this. Laugh. It's time to laugh. That was a joke. Let them know it was a joke instead of standing there with that blank look on your face because you didn't get it. Just laugh. Make them feel good. They told a joke. It's not complicated spirituality. I go into the jail and if something moves me to discuss something, that's what we discuss. And sometimes the guys look at me and say, oh, that's exactly what we needed to talk about tonight. It's not me, folks. I am not that person. It's something greater giving me a nudge and just following it.
Well, you mentioned the jail and the prison service. We talk a little bit about that stuff that because you're the district chair for that committee, and can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, ideally, what one is trying to do when one walks into a jail or a prison after being searched and background checked and taught a bunch of stuff that may or may not be relevant. Ideally, what you're trying to do is run a meeting. Let the guys in there have a meeting. I do it a little differently. I try to walk through a section of the book, kind of explaining what's going on in that section. What is Bill writing to us? For example, one day I looked at the guys and I said, anybody know when the doctor's opinion was written? Well, doctor's opinion is like 1938. Bill gets the book in publication in 39. Silkworth really did see people in Towns Hospital recover because of Bill's idea. So Silkworth is basically saying, I trust these guys because they're working with the people that, and getting somewhere with people that I could never get anywhere with because they were hopeless. I'm going to go out on a limb here. You and I are hopeless people, Joe. That was where I was at when I got here. I was hopeless. I had a therapist work with me for 5 years. And his biggest comment to me week after week, don't stop AA. He didn't get anywhere with me. AA did. The guys in the fellowship did. Yeah.
I was seeing a therapist before that, by the way, and she told me you better go to AA. That's what she told me.
So let me finish this thing about corrections. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at people who are doing this over and over and over, and I'm trying to dive in there and say, do you feel helpless? Do you feel hopeless? Do you feel like it's going to go on for the rest of your life? The minute somebody says, yeah, man, and I don't know what to do about it, I say, listen to us. Just listen to us in a meeting. Put your paper down. It'll get signed. Listen. You got nothing to lose. Listen. You got everything to gain. It's going to take time. You know, they're just hurting people. And they're putting on a big show about being strong and a lot of things. But deep down, they're just hurting, you know, and deep down, they don't have a clue what to do differently. And boy, I identify with that, because the only difference between them and me is I never got caught for my drunk driving, and I did enough of it to spend time in jail. And I never got caught at anything else I did that would have put me in the jail. But I lived up here in this head of mine for years alone. And that was jail. That loneliness, that despair, that hopelessness. Nothing is going right. I didn't need to be in jail. I was there. Yeah. And so whether it's treatment or corrections, for me, it's, are you hopeless? Because I got a way out. And it's not my way. It's AA's way. And if you don't want to listen, guess what? I don't care, because you can do this again and again and again. And people look at me like I'm crazy, man, but I'm not, because they've raised their hand and said they've done it again and again and again. Oh,
Yeah. One of my favorite things at one of the clubs is on the door, it says, "Hope is found here," you know? And so, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we lived in isolation and prison in our own minds. I think, the difference between us and them really is location, at this point. So yeah, but I've had a wonderful experience in the short, been able to do it. And with meeting, and it's been a big deal for me, and a great addition to my recovery for sure. Sure.
And I got introduced to this in the mid-90s when my home group took on a commitment to go to a jail once a month. And that led me to understand that the guys in jail were just like me. And I couldn't have said it then because I didn't understand it, but I do today. This is a journey, and you learn stuff all along this journey, 4 days and I got 39 years. I am still learning about me, who I am, what makes me tick, why I get angry, why I get upset. The other day I screamed at my son, walked up to him a little later, dropped my hand and goes, "Shouldn't have done that. You didn't deserve it." Yeah.
It's one of the beautiful things we get in this program is the ability to look at ourselves if we remain open-minded and willing. That's the key. Are we open-minded? Am I open-minded? Am I willing today to learn something new about me?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's what makes this not only a journey, but if you're, if you've got your functions and you've got a job and you've got a wife and children and things are going well, recovery is hard, because what's really wrong? I'm drinking too much. But in my case, it wasn't I'm drinking too much. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm losing all of it, and I don't know how to function. And that's what a lot of these guys do, is that they don't know how to function. And they tell me right up front, I'll go back to doing what I was doing because that's what I know. And I go, the hardest thing you're ever going to do is change your life. And we're here to help.
100%. What is there anything you wanted to talk about, Dave, that we haven't talked about?
Ooh. Yeah, if you're hearing my voice and you're in your first year, your first 6 months, your first 5 years, just remember this. it's a freaking journey. And there are plateaus. There are moments when you don't think you're going anywhere. Don't freaking give up. At the very least, don't take a drink and come back to a meeting. Talk to your sponsor, reason things out, and it will get different again. That's my 39 years. A plateau, talk to my sponsor, something gives at the right moment. I grow, I change. I get to a plateau where I'm kind of doing the same thing over and over and over, and then something, boom, walk into a meeting and all of a sudden I feel moved to say something, and then that just makes me think about something else, and then I just sort of sit there quietly thinking, oh my God, what am I learning? How can I share it? Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Never give up on the journey, because I've lived half my life, little more than half my life in recovery, and this is the better part of it, the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm sure that 4 or 5 years from now, I'm going to go, this is the better part of it, 4 or 5 years. And it's fine. That's how it works. Bill writes about emotional sobriety. And I think once you're not drinking and once you start to learn to function, that's the next frontier. How am I emotionally stable in the face of disasters, water heaters going out, cats dying, family being upset over the death of a cat, water heater going out, dishwasher not working before Thanksgiving? You take it all in stride, but in the first couple of years, it's just one more crisis you can't deal with. Now it's more like, okay, we'll deal with it.
And you're like me, Dave. You're like, holy crap, I got a dishwasher. That's a freaking miracle. I've got a car with actual tires on it that aren't like mix and match. That's a big deal.
It's registered.
And it's registered.
I had a guy tell me I had a guy tell me one time, it's registered. He was so proud of that. And in his space and in his time, that was a major accomplishment. I can remember when it's registered, this condo is mine, was a major accomplishment. I'm sitting in the house that my wife and I proudly own and do not have a mortgage on. And when we bought this place, I thought, uh-oh, I'm working for a long time to pay this much money off. And we paid it off early. Thanks, Jack.
What an amazing thing. What an amazing gift. Well, well, thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your story and sharing, the hope and really, I love that the focus you have on service and really emotional sobriety, and that is, I think that's such an important thing for people to hear. So I appreciate you sharing it.
So don't be surprised this Wednesday night I act like a jerk.
It's all right. I'll say a little prayer for you.
Thanks.
Well, I can't let you go without our rapid fire questions. So if you are ready, sir, what is your favorite recovery slogan?
There, but by the grace of God, go I.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Work it, you're worth it. I don't want to always do the work. Or better yet, live and let live is a close second. I don't want to always let them live.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
You asked earlier about spirituality, and I think it's when I'm sitting in a meeting and something comes over me to say certain things that I really, I don't know why I say them. And then people walk up to me and go, that was perfect. Or the jail will look at me and say, we were thinking about that. That was perfect. That's the superpower. And I'm not going to call it's just it's what we all have. I mean, if we think about it, we all have it. It's that quiet moment when you hear something and you go follow it.
That's pretty cool. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
You'll be okay one day.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Well, there was Man in a Bottle by, yeah. Um, it, Here's something. See, therapist said, listen to music, Dave. And I don't. But there are types of music I really enjoy. In the holidays, I like the Christmas music. But the rest of the year, if a song moves me, that's the song I listen to for a while. Real connoisseur here. Don't ask for names and titles and dates and places and the songwriter and the singer because it ain't happening.
It's okay. It's all right. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Wow. Just keep being patient. You know.
What step do you love the most?
The easier question would be, which step do I not like the most? And that would be 4. But having done it and understand what it's about, yeah, I guess it's the one where I make that decision. 3, because that's what I did in the Navy. I made a decision, and I didn't even know anything about AA, but I was making a decision because I was desperate. And when I realized there was more to it than not drinking, that was my second major decision, to ask God for help with the stuff other than just not taking a drink. The life that I have, the life that I really wasn't enjoying back then, what I am now.
So I'll give you the opportunity. What step do you love the least? He's holding up the number 4, people, so you know. What is one of your favorite movies?
As a kid, I really enjoyed Airport. I read the book a couple of times, saw the movie twice in one night. I just couldn't get enough of it. So that is one favorite movie of mine. There are others, but that's the one that stands out.
That's a good one. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You're home.
Nice.
You're home. The suffering, the agony that sometimes I experience in my life today, I'm home. It's over. I don't have to have regrets. I don't have to have thoughts that come to me that just drive me right out my freaking mind. I mean, I'm doing great, and all of a sudden the thought just go boom, and it's like, okay, that ruined the rest of the day. You know, if I don't take a drink and I don't kill somebody, it's been a great day. You know, we reduce it to that. But yeah, I'm home. There's peace here. You're okay. You don't have to do anything. You're all right. Just sit tight. Life will be okay here.
Well said, Dave. Thank you so much, my friend, for taking the time.
Well, I hope I helped somebody, and if I helped nobody, I had a great time for an hour and 9 minutes so far.
I can tell you helped me. So how about that?
Well, that makes my moment. My son, on the other hand, is only thrilled that the hot water heater works and that Dad made it work.
You will be taking a hot shower in joy tonight. So, way to go, guys! Way to go! And for the rest of you out there, please subscribe to our friends at thedailyponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of The Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." Please like, follow, subscribe, and share, because somebody out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day, everybody.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.